My name is Lee Cronk. I'm a professor in the Department of Anthropology at Rutgers University. I'm also a member of the Center for Human Evolutionary Studies. The research project that is taking up most of my time these days is called the Human Generosity Project. And it's an effort to involve multiple disciplines at multiple sites around the world in the study of human generosity in general, but also more specifically mutual aid and sharing patterns that arise in situations where there's risk and where people pool risk by helping each other out. What we're hoping to find out is the sorts of situations in which this kind of generosity is most adaptive and most likely to arise. And also psychologically, what sorts of triggers lead people to be more generous. We're doing this through fieldwork at 7 sites around the world. One of them is the Masai site in East Africa, because I've been working with Masai since 1985. And one of the institutions that they have that allows them to live in a fairly risky and harsh environment is something that they call osotwa. And osotwa literally means an umbilical cord. But they use it in a metaphorical sense to refer to a kind of relationship that people have with each other. So 2 individuals will agree that they are each other's osotwa partners, umbilical cord partners. And what that means is that if one gets in trouble, the other one will help him out, and vice versa. It doesn't mean they're obligated to give each other necessarily, it's only if one of them gets in trouble. And there's also no expectation of debt or necessary return. The site that I'm working on primarily is with ranchers on the border between New Mexico and Arizona. It's an area called the Malpai region. It's a high desert country, so very, very low population density, very few animals there, but what you can do there economically is ranch. It's a very, in a sense, a risky way to make a living, to be a rancher. There's all kinds of unpredictable elements. The weather is extremely unpredictable. They worry about droughts a great deal. And one of the interesting things that we found out in talking to them is that one of the other unpredictable things about life there is injuries. Being a rancher, working as a cowboy, is a dangerous way to make a living. It's a very injury-prone occupation. And the problem is that these are small family ranches, and if one member of the family is out with an injury, say he falls off his horse and breaks his collarbone, they don't have enough labor to do the work they have to do. The way they handle this is all the neighbors find out about this and they all pitch in. And they don't expect anything in return, they don't get any payment for it. All that's expected is that if they're in the same boat at some point in the future, the same thing will happen for them. Our goals for the Human Generosity Project are to produce something that may be a practical benefit in terms of how to inspire people to be generous in the most effective and appropriate ways, most helpful ways. People do very commonly and thankfully give to those in need. This is a common human pattern. They give to charities. When there's a disaster, they give to the Red Cross or to Oxfam or whatever it may be. But it's not always done in a way that is the most effective. My wife, Beth Leach, just wrapped up about a 7 or 8 year period running the food pantry. And what she learned in the process of running it for that long was that cash donations were a lot more helpful than food donations. But people like to give food donations. It makes people feel good to give food donations, but food has a sort of emotional quality to it that makes people feel good. But the fact is that the food pantry itself has access to food at lower prices. So the food that is donated is very much appreciated, but cash is more effective. So the question is, how do you change people's mindset so that cash is a better response, or the more likely response? So we hope to learn more about that and aim that in particular at disaster response and disaster relief responses. So the Human Generosity Project is very much a team effort, and that team includes my collaborator Athena Actipus and her postdocs at Arizona State, but it also includes some institutions. Rutgers, obviously, and especially the Center for Human Evolutionary Studies at Rutgers. The Center for Human Evolutionary Studies funded my initial research into this topic back in 2005. So if it wasn't for them, this project would not exist. We have various ideas about collaborating with other scientists, looking more specifically at response to disasters and response to hazards in the world, and managing that response more effectively. It's somehow paradoxical to say that it's adaptive for people to be generous to those in need, but it is. It makes sense that we would have a predilection to be generous towards those in need, because that's how our ancestors made it. Our ancestors lived in risky environments, and if they weren't generous to those in need, then nobody would be generous to them when they were in need. And so the only way they could have made it is through this. So being generous to those in need is something that's part of our makeup. I think everybody ought to be interested in that message. I think it's a positive message about who we are as organisms, and how evolution made us into organisms that are not entirely selfish, but actually have a capability of being generous towards those in need.